Hey guys, what's up? I'm Erin and welcome back to the channel. So we're all aware that we're in the middle of a very high inflationary period right now. Inflation is sitting at about 8%, a little bit above. But some headlines are saying that rather than inflation being our biggest concern, deflation could follow our current inflationary period and thus be a greater concern. Now, before we dive into that, I want to make sure we have an adequate understanding of what inflation is and what deflation is. Now, at this point, I really do feel like everyone has talked about inflation ad nauseum, so I don't want to beat a dead horse. So stated simply, inflation is just a generalized increase of prices of goods and services without wages following suit. And deflation is kind of the opposite of that. But because it's not talked about as often, let's dive a little deeper. Stated in that same simple manner, it's a generalized decrease in the prices of goods and services. At first glance, you might be thinking, yay, cheaper goods and services. That means things are going to become more affordable. But deflation is really bad for an economy. When prices decline, this cuts into the profit margins of businesses. And if they decline enough, businesses will start to have to look for ways to reduce their expenses. The biggest expenses that most businesses face is the wages of their employees. This can lead to layoffs, reduced worked hours, and even wage cuts. And if people make less money, they start to demand less goods and services. If there's a less demand for goods and services, businesses sell less and the cycle continues. So deflation isn't good. Yes, it leads to a lower cost for goods and services, but it also leads to lower wages and higher unemployment. If this cycle continues, the productivity of our nation can decline, GDP can turn negative, real interest rates can turn negative, and as people start to struggle to make ends meet, bankruptcies and foreclosures can increase, which can threaten the solvency of our nation's banks. Once deflation starts, and if it's severe, it can be a very hard cycle to break. It's also worth noting that episodes of deflation can vary in severity. Deflation can be deep and widespread throughout an entire economy, like what happened after World War II. Or deflation can be fairly mild in its effects. Deflation was also a factor at play in the 2008 financial crisis, but it was also fairly brief and maxed out at about -2%. So is deflation a concern for us going forward? Well, there are three primary factors that can trigger deflation. And I really don't want to say the first one. Number one, an increase in monetary supply. I think we're just going to check yes to that box and move on. Number two, a drop in demand for consumer goods and services. I don't think this one's really a concern. Our consumer demand is very strong, and it's partly what's contributing to our current inflation. And number three, a drop in production costs for suppliers. Well, that's definitely not an issue right now. I haven't seen many or any headlines about costs coming down, that's for sure. So our real concern is that $5 trillion increase in the monetary supply. Periods of deflation can occur after monetary expansion, like when the Fed gets a little bit loosey-goosey with their money printing machines. We currently are switching over from quantitative easing, where the Fed was printing money like there's no tomorrow, to quantitative tightening, where the Fed is trying to reduce monetary supply. Now, this transition does not guarantee deflation. In fact, the most prominent prediction at this time is a recession, and a recession and deflation are not the same thing. A recession is marked by 2 consecutive quarters of negative GDP growth, so a nation's economic output is declining. Most typically during a recession, inflation levels will fall. The prices of goods and services will continue to increase, they'll just do so at a lesser rate. Deflation is when inflation turns negative, aka falling prices. So we could experience a recession and deflation together, like we did during the 2008 financial crisis, but one does not guarantee the other. In fact, experiencing both together is often a warning of a deeper recession, like a depression. Interestingly enough, the 2 biggest arguments I've heard for a future deflationary period aren't necessarily related to our increase in monetary supply. Instead, they're related to the automation of jobs and our interest rates. The argument that looks at the automation of work theorizes with technology and computers playing a bigger and bigger role in businesses, workers are being displaced, saying that within the next decade or two, up to 35% of American workers could lose their job to technology. And with so many workers being displaced, it could threaten the output of our nation. Now, personally, I don't know how much weight I would give this theory as far as triggering deflation. Yes, technological advances certainly are making sub-jobs obsolete, and yes, some workers are being displaced. But technology also creates new jobs, so I think looking at technology as only eliminating jobs is a rather narrow view. New technology forces you to adapt, but so long as you are willing to adapt, new technologies present new opportunities. So I absolutely think jobs will change, but I don't see greater technology as a threat to workers. We no longer have telephone operators, and many manufacturing jobs have been automated. Jobs that existed 50 years ago or even just 10 years ago may cease to exist today. But I think greater technology creates newer, more prominent job opportunities. The other argument for deflation surrounds our interest rates. America runs huge trade deficits, importing many goods from countries like China and giving them American dollars for those goods. This theory states that if our interest rates remain low, there will be no incentive for these nations to hold on to the US dollar. Instead, they'll cash it out and exchange it for a more desirable currency. This will reduce the demand for the dollar and devalue it, and thus trigger deflation. Now, I don't know about this one either. The fact of the matter is, the US dollar is the most widely accepted currency throughout the entire world. The fact that it's backed by the US government carries a great deal of weight. People have confidence in the US's ability to pay on its debt obligations. Also, where are they going to go? Is there a more trusted currency? No. Are there markets that are just absolutely booming as the US stock market takes a hit? No. Perhaps it could give us some solace to know that the Federal Reserve branch of St. Louis is currently estimating our deflationary risk at 0.0000. I mean, that's a stat I can get behind. Perhaps deflation isn't in our future. Perhaps we'll just experience disinflation, which is simply when the rate of inflation slows down, which would be a good thing because we all want prices to stop increasing so rapidly. There's also a chance that we can experience price declines that are more limited in scope and sector specific and don't affect the entire economy as a whole, like the declining stock market, or perhaps real estate declines, or maybe certain commodities do, but they do so in a way that doesn't disrupt the entire economy. Or perhaps we can count on the Fed engineering that perfect soft landing while they slow down inflation and increase interest rates, all while avoiding a recession and deflation. Okay, that's probably not likely. I really don't like to make macroeconomic predictions because macroeconomics is so incredibly complex and involves so many different factors. However, this is not advice. This is just a personal opinion. I do think a recession is likely. I'm hopeful that it will be brief in nature, and I'm hoping it brings with it disinflation, where we simply reduce our inflationary pressures right now. Until other macroeconomic issues like global supply chain shortages are straightened out, I don't think deflation is a real possibility. There's too much demand propping it all up. But again, that's just a personal opinion. Let me know what you guys think in the comments down below. I want to do a quick PSA here. If someone leaves a comment using my picture down below saying reach out to me via WhatsApp or Telegram, please know that it is not me. I do not have WhatsApp. I don't know what Telegram is, and I will never ask you guys to reach out to me on a personal level. So I just wanted to put that out there. Please ignore them. They are spam. I flag them when I see them, and I'm sorry that they leave those kind of comments. But that's gonna do it for me today, guys. I post new videos every single week. If you got anything at all out of this one, please give it a like. If you're new here, please consider subscribing, or if you know of someone who might get something out of this type of content, please consider sharing. I'll see you guys soon. Bye. Increases of, I didn't like that at all. Propping it up. They don't. This with business, if you, what the frick? Airplane. People, I got 10% battery. I need you to be quick. Inflation can be fair. Got through it in one take. Yeah. for obvious reasons, aren't necessarily my stomach is eating itself. I'm so hungry, but I'm not gonna stop. Okay. Want to deet. Honey, I don't like that one. You can credit scar. All the while, no. I was so close.